For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 Boston City Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is April 8th, 2024. Happy Solar Eclipse Day, and thank you for joining us and tuning into this hearing. This hearing is being recorded. It's also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.wm@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you're looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Shane Pack, at shane.pac@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on docket number 0530, message in order for your approval in order to reduce the FY24 appropriation for the Reserve for Collective Bargaining by $7,760,193 to provide funding for the Boston Police Department for the FY24 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Police Detective Benevolent Society. Docket number 0531, message in an order for a supplemental appropriation order for the Boston Police Department in the amount of $7,767,193 to cover the FY24 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Police Detective Benevolent Society. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023, and July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. The major provisions for the contract include base wage increases of 2%, 1%, and 2.5% to be given in July of each fiscal year of the contract term, as well as the addition of the transitional career in July 2023. The contract also contains reforms relating to discipline, officer return to duty, paid detail system, and union release. Docket number 0532, message in order for your approval in order to reduce the FY24 appropriation for the Reserve for Collective Bargaining by $34,294 to provide funding for a city department for the FY24 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Office of Professional Employees International Union, Local 6. Docket number 0533, message in order for a supplemental appropriation order for a city department in the amount of $34,294 to cover the FY24 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Office of Professional Employees International Union, Local 6. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2027. The major provisions for the contract include base wage increases of 2% to be given in October of each fiscal year of the contract term, and flat amounts of $500, $250, $900, and $800 to be added to annual salaries in January of each fiscal year. Docket number 0631, message in order for your approval in order to reduce the FY24 appropriation for the Reserve of Collective Bargaining by $4,909,838 to provide funding for the Boston Police Department for the FY24 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Police Detectives Benevolent Society Superior Officers Union. Docket number 0632, message in order for a supplemental appropriation order for the Boston Police Department for FY24 in the amount of $4,909,838 to cover the FY24 costs contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Police Detective Benevolent Society Superior Officers Union. The terms of the contracts are July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023, and July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2%, 1.5%, 2%, and 1%, and 2.5%, to be given in July of each fiscal year of the contract term, as well as the addition of the Transitional Career Award Program in July 2023. The contract also contains reforms relating to discipline, offers of return to duty, paid detail system, and union release. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu. Dockets 0530 to 30533 were referred to committee on March 20th, 2024, and dockets number 06631 to 0632 were referred to the committee on April 3rd, 2024. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival: Council President Louis Jen, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Fitzgerald. We also received a letter of absence from Councilors Coletta and Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. As Chair of Ways and Means Committee, I'm pleased to host today's meeting to discuss the collective bargaining agreement outlined in these dockets. These orders highlight the physical adjustments necessary to support collective bargaining agreement within our city departments, particularly regarding the Police Department and Office Professional Employees International Union Local 6. The provisions outlined underscore the significance of maintaining equitable and sustainable labor relations while ensuring the effective allocation of resources. I want to thank the administration for being here today, and I'm looking forward to the conversations today. We are joined by the administration from Renee Bushy, Director of Labor Relations, and Jim Williamson, Director of Office of Budget and Management. I'll turn it to my councilor colleagues. Do you guys have any open remarks? Council President Louis Jen.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to say thank you to the administration for being here. I know that these contracts were a long time in the making to get some of the reforms that we wanted, and I'm really encouraged to see some of the reforms in the Boston Police Detective Benevolent Society contract. Something that has always perplexed me is the amount that we've been spending on court overtime, and I think this contract really tries to get us to a place where we're reducing, given that we've made advancements of technology and we can alert people to when they do and don't have to go to court, seeing that reduction in that mandatory overtime for court appearances is encouraging. So I want to thank the administration and the union for the efforts in really cracking down on that and having some cost savings for the city. We also saw we also see some similar reforms here like we did to the past contract when it comes to opening up opening up details. Also, when it comes to discipline, certain disciplinary actions that will not lead to arbitration, and I think it's an important starting point. Obviously, there's still more work to be done, but I just want to commend the administration and the union for being able to come together on some of these issues that many, myself, advocates, so many have been wanting to see. So thank you for your work on this, and I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding these hearings.
Thank you, Council President. Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here, for negotiating in good faith with various unions as well. I also acknowledge the professional work of the administration team that's here. I also want to ensure that we also address going into this budget season that we are down significantly, several hundred police officers, and that gap is growing. We don't have enough police officers in the city. I want to see what this budget will do to ensure that we're bringing police officers in the city, but I also think it's important for us as elected officials to support police, to support the police department, especially during challenging and difficult times. Police officers are members of our community. They're our neighbors. They're involved in our youth sports teams. And I want to see that we treat them with respect as well. Mr. Chair, were the police union officials invited also to testify?
I've reached out to the union, and they're always welcome to testify.
Are they testifying today?
I don't see them in the room today.
Okay. So if there's an issue a question I have on the specific language of the contract as it relates to the police department, Jim, are you prepared to answer details about how this impacts the operation of the police department?
I think that probably is better suited to handle by Renee. She is more familiar with like the contract terms.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Flynn. Council Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for holding this hearing. I hope we can come to an agreement and vote soon. I know that the police unions and their members have been working hard along with your office. These last 2.5 years have been spent a lot of time with you coming in, presenting contracts, and we're finalizing a lot of them, which is good. I know in one round of questioning, Councilor Flynn will bring it up. One thing he does always say is like, did we give enough? But at the same time, we do have to be fiscally responsible. Knowing that I can reach out directly to the individual police unions, but making sure that there isn't anything left out or anything that they want to make sure before we do take a vote to pass is important to me also. So I will direct questions if I have, and if you can't answer them, then hopefully we can get them on the record and make sure that we have those answers for our colleagues before we take a vote. Chair, can I ask through you, are we planning on voting on this on Wednesday?
That would be the intention, based on how this conversation goes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Council Fitzgerald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the administration for coming today. Look, well, this is certainly a lot of money, right, to go out. If you think about recent incidents that have occurred, we've had a cop shot. Unfortunately, was saved by his vest. We just recently here at the hall on Friday had several people get bitten. So the perils that these folks put themselves through is certainly on full display, unfortunately, even in recent days, weeks, and months. And so it's hard to say that they don't deserve some of these dollars. That being said, I've got a lot to learn as a new city councilor here and sort of going through my first round. And so, I'm here to learn and listen as well, but glad that we are supporting our police across all the unions here, and look forward to learning more from you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Fitzgerald. Now over to the administration.
Thank you, Chair Worrell and other members of the Boston City Council. We're happy here today. I'm joined by, my name is Jim Williamson. I'm the budget director here at the City of Boston. I'm joined by Renee Bushy, who is the head of labor relations for the City of Boston. And we appreciate this opportunity to talk about the 3 collective bargaining agreements, the police detectives, the police detective superiors, and the OPEIU union, which is represents staff at ISD. These 6 dockets represent transactions between the collective bargaining reserve into departmental budgets. So docket 0530 and 0531 move $7.8 million out of the collective bargaining reserve into the police department to support the police department's new wage requirements for the new contract. 0532 and 0533 move $34,000 from the collective bargaining reserve into ISD to support the wage requirements of the new contract for OPEIU. And then the last set of dockets, 0631 and 0632, move about $4.9 million from the collective bargaining reserve into the police department for the police detective superiors contract. In aggregate, all 3 of these are like a $12.7 million reduction in the collective bargaining reserve. And as we started this fiscal year with the ratification of the FY24 budget in June with $76.2 million in aggregate in the reserve, since July, the City Council has passed 10 collective bargaining agreements with a cost totaling $46.8 million for those 10 city and public health commission unions. With this reduction of $12.7 million, for these 3 unions, the balance will stand at $16.7 million. With that, I will turn it over to, I don't know if Renee has something.
Sure, I can give you, good afternoon, councilors. I'll just give you a quick summary of where we are, I think, with these 3 contracts. The 2 police contracts, the detectives and the detective superiors, are largely mirror the contract, the MOA we did with the BPPA contract. It has the same provision on discipline, well, for the detectives. The detective superiors contract does not have a just cause provision, so that was not included in their MOA. But the discipline provision mirrored, the same one that's in BPPA is mirrored in the detectives, limiting arbitration rights for certain listed offenses. The other major provision in both of these is some reforms to the detail system, which allows BPD to sort of centralize and prioritize type 1 details so we can get these covered for public safety, provides the officers for a higher rate for doing that, limits times when they can be paid for doing 2 details at the same time. Let's see, I think that's out in the details. There's a few other things there, but those are the highlights. Both the detectives and the detective superior contracts limit union release time for officers, so that they have some provisions in there on it. We limit around 1/3 to 20%. Again, I think that puts more opportunity for officers to be on the streets and maybe limit some overtime when that needs to be backfilled. So we were happy to get some of those provisions included. Unlike the BPPA contracts, both of these contracts can include limitations on court time. Detectives and detective superiors I believe our numbers told us that spend a lot of overtime. They get 4 hours minimum for every time they're scheduled to go to court, and it cancels within 72 hours. So we got that down to 24 hours for the cancellation. So that's hopefully about a 2/3 limit on the court time when it's canceled. You know, the idea being 24 hours is kind of a lot of notice today, and you can still maybe go do a detail or something else if you have that kind of notice. They didn't have the same, the BPPA contract had detail clerks involved in it and giving up some of those positions and putting them on the street as well. So we focus more on court time with the detectives. And they gave us a few other provisions on, you know, just the impacts of central lockup, which is something BPD is working on as well. The OPEIU contract is a small group of employees in ISD. As Jim said, you know, it's a unit that doesn't have a ton of issues, I think, in the labor relations field. So that this contract mirrors more what we did with AFSCME and SIU, the citywide contracts we recently were here on. We're happy that this also incorporates, you know, the flat amounts, so it hits the lower paid workers more than, you know, just affects them a little bit differently and helps them more than the higher paid workers. We also were able to provide sick and bereavement leave for employees on probation. Some things for the department were, you know, just getting some limitations on who can bid in the bid process, and we were increasing on-call pay so we could get some, ensure to help get some positions staffed. But that's largely the same provisions that were in AFSCME and SEIU, the other citywide contracts. So that's sort of the overview of the contracts we're here on today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the overview. Now I'll open up to my colleagues for a round of questionings. Councilor Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, tell me about health and wellness support for officers and their families. What increased in this contract?
For health and wellness, I'm not sure. Yeah.
There wasn't an increase in health and wellness.
Tell me what the language says currently about health and wellness.
I know we had some proposals on health and wellness, I think from both sides. But just with the cost of some of these budgetary items and the priorities of the parties, that did not end up getting included in the MOA.
how will this new contract impact the detail system? Will it streamline, will it strengthen the detail system? Certainly the Boston Police Patrolman Association recently had their contract signed as well. Now the detectives, superior officers. What impact will this have on details? I'm going to assume, Jim, it's going to strengthen it. Is that accurate?
It's helped to reform the operation of details, yes.
So now there'll be more police officers on the street covering important details. Is that accurate?
That was the intent of the language, by prioritizing type 1s and, indicating, over 5,000, and the commissioner can basically decide where there's a public safety need, and getting people to those bigger events, requiring to do type 1s first and paying them more to do it should be a benefit to public safety.
Okay. The Boston Police Crime Lab, I understand, is not part of this contract.
That's correct.
That's being currently negotiated, isn't it?
I think they're going to start this month.
Okay. I know we have challenges at the crime lab. I would want someone from Boston Police Department to be at the hearing when we discuss the crime lab contract, so we can answer, so we can ask specific questions related to the crime lab. Mental health counseling support for police families. I know language wasn't changed for health and wellness, but how are we supporting our police officers and their families through this contract?
I mean, the one thing, you're increasing their salaries quite a bit. I mean, that gives them a lot of different supports, I think. These are pretty large increases with the TCAP and the strike rate for details. On a just sort of fundamental level, it's putting a lot more money in their pockets. So hopefully that will take some of the ease off. A lot of, I think, mental health problems come related to financial, or people don't have access to certain helps for mental health issues. So I think just financially would have to be the answer to that.
Jim, will this budget that we will see, will it ensure that we are down significantly police officers in the city? Are we going to ensure that we have enough money in the budget to put on many classes?
Yes, it will include funding for replacement classes, yes.
What are the numbers, Jim?
I think there's probably, there are larger classes included, planned in the budget. So I think it's in the 200 to 400, 150 range. They planned for some attrition during the class, so.
How many people do we expect to retire over the next year in the Boston Police?
I don't have those figures with me, but it's they're.
The reason I asked that question, I balanced that question with the number of recruits that we're putting through in upcoming classes, and factoring also that we're down several hundred police officers. The city is growing in population, especially in my district as well, in the South Boston waterfront. What are we doing, Jim, to make up for the lack of police in the growing population?
So we do monitor retirements as they occur, and so your budget, what you think the class is based on historic sort of retirement rates or attrition rates in the department. But as you approach, the point in time when the police department is looking to put on the class, looking for authority to start recruiting and putting people in the class, if there's higher levels of attrition, we will definitely increase the class size. There are obviously some operational capacity issues that they have to consider, but we definitely are willing to adjust class sizes to meet changes in, attrition in retirement.
I highlighted it before, but the crime lab, I am concerned about what is happening at the crime lab. Are we paying these DNA analysts enough money so that they're able to support their families? It's a highly skilled technical job. how are we doing ensuring that we're paying these analysts the appropriate salary?
I don't know if there's a particular proposal to evaluate their salaries, but there is a capacity within the administration to evaluate compensation across other jurisdictions, and to see if it's obviously there has to be a consideration for locality, but I don't know that there's a proposal before us on a wage review for that group, but.
We are short, I understand, with DNA analysts in the crime lab. It's troubling. Are we able to ensure that this next budget addresses DNA-related, it deals with crime lab-related issues, personnel?
We haven't started negotiations with that group yet, but I would anticipate that, if there was significant staffing issues, we would do some class and comp, potentially do some class and comp reviews of where they are.
Well, they had 2 DNA analysts left the office within the last couple of weeks. So who would make up their work when that happens?
Operationally, I would assume it would be redeployed within the department. Obviously, people have to pick up additional workload, or potentially you could have stretch out, evaluation timeframes.
Well, that's an important issue, is the crime lab. And do we have enough personnel there as it is right now, Jim?
I don't think we got a budget proposal for the crime lab specifically. I could certainly look at it, but
Well, that's something I've been advocating for, is beefing up the crime lab. That's important. When a crime happens, that evidence is used and sent to court to prosecute cases, and we need to have the necessary certified professionals in there. I'm concerned about that. We are not meeting the state requirement of 30 days of testing evidence. And I want to make sure that when a crime happens, the evidence that is sent to the DNA, that DNA that is sent to the crime lab is tested. But we need to ensure we have the right personnel there. It needs to be fully funded, and it's not fully funded right now. And that's what I want to highlight during this upcoming budget season as well. What do you think, Jim?
Oh, we're certainly open to sort of evaluating, operational changes within the police department. So.
Yeah, but this is timely. This has to happen soon. We need people in that crime lab now. We need them trained. We need them into the human resources system. That system needs to be streamlined, where if someone applies for a job, that they can get an answer back if they're going to be hired or not. I think people can live with that, but I don't think you can have someone applying for a job and you're still waiting to give them an official response or answer a year later. That has an impact on morale. That has an impact on the operation of the crime lab. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions surrounding the detail system. If we could speak to where is the system now, what changes were made to it, and if you could speak to what did the process look like and what changes were implemented throughout this contract, and what does it look like now? And if it's working well.
I'll, speak broadly to it. I am not, not able to give every single detail. We probably would need, someone from command staff to give like specific details. But broadly, they have implemented the process, designating certain jobs type 1 and others type 2, with the priority being to fill the type 1 positions first. There's been a few.
Could you describe what type 1 and type 2, who falls into type 1?
So type 1 are going to be, like, we did have some conversations with the superiors, and we added to their contract, any detail that requires a superior officer would be type 1. And I just want to give you it is.
For the public, could you, or even myself, could you explain what detail that would be? Would it be a traffic detail, an
Right.
open
Oh, so-
street? Like, yeah.
So if, besides type 1 and type 2, then we talked about some traffic details where you wouldn't necessarily need a post-certified officer. So that could be, or potentially it could be retirees as well. They haven't implemented that part of it yet. They're still on just getting the type 1 and the type 2. So besides, there was major events with more than 5,000 people, utility and construction details, and then I said supervisory details. Type 2 are going to be more, we call it like the shady street details, where the officer's there watching utilities, there's not a lot of people around, things like that. So by making it centralized and making all the details in the city that are type 1, going through the process in the contract, of course, get filled prior to type 2s, I think that should be increasing public safety. And there's been a few back and forth with the unions on some of these issues, but from what I know so far, it looks like it is improving getting the type 1 details filled.
Could you speak to how much the city profits from, or how much we spend out of pocket on these details? Because it's true that the companies pay for these, and don't we as a city get an additional
Yeah, there is
financial support on top of the police officers getting paid? The city also gets money from these details?
Yeah, there is an administrative fee tacked on to the cost of the detail.
And what is that?
I think it's 15%
15% of,
of the cost of the detail, I believe.
and what is the cost of a detail?
I think it depends on the number of hours and the number of officers.
And the rank
Right,
and-
yeah.
Right, but that's all important information to know. How much, because we do talk a lot about police officers, getting a lot of money on details, but we taxpayers don't pay that fee. And then we as a city are able to use the revenue that comes in to fund other important services like senior services or youth summer jobs, cleaning up our parks and
Yep, yeah,
paving our streets, all the things that, rats, all the important quality of life issues that we have here on the.
Yeah, we can get you the
That'd be-
component of the administrative fee associated with details that comes into the general fund. And as you're right to point out that those, along with any number of other administrative fees and that are come into the general fund and are redeployed to all the services that
Right.
we depend on.
Right, okay. No, that would be good, and if I could get a breakdown, I would assume my colleagues would want to know too, to share.
Sure.
So through the chair, can we make sure that it's also detailed enough to know the amount over the last, I'd say, 3 years, and what departments have benefited from that? Can you tell from the general fund, or is it just
No,
there?
no,
But how
it's-
much has gone into the general fund?
Yes, how much
Because
is
we do
coming,
have dollar
right.
amounts of how much things cost, right?
Yes.
Making sure we're training our lifeguards and fixing our pools, or, there's a direct
Yep.
dollar amount.
Yeah, that's one thing associated with the general fund. When things go into the general fund, they're not earmarked for any particular, they're loosely aligned with things, education aid is for education, but all your general fund comes in and can be assigned to things that's not expense specific.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Murphy. And quick question around Council Murphy's line of question. Do we no longer, under the new paid detail system, do we no longer collect a fee off of those that will be, where there's not a police officer at the paid detail system?
Like a third party.
Right, like a
detail.
third party, right?
I would think we would still include that as an administrative fee. The administrative costs are still present.
Will still be present?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are, city staff that are responsible for managing, billing, collecting.
That part of it, I would say we just don't have the contracts with the vendors or we just haven't done it yet. So I think there would be some kind of, we don't have the contracts in place to tell you
Exactly.
definitively.
All right, thank you. Council Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Chair. Fantastic questions from my colleagues regarding all this stuff. Again, just to reiterate the fact that all these unions across the board, patrolmen, detectives, superiors, their job is enforcement of the law and to hold people accountable. And what I'm happy to see here is that they also take that upon themselves, and that they are also holding themselves accountable, and will be, and there are those around like ourselves and others to enforce if they are not, right? And that's what these contracts do. And so, while it is I think you're right, a lot of the benefits come more in the wallet than anything else, and I don't think they would disagree, and I don't think they're sad about that. The accountability and the enforcement that is there now. And I think it's a group of folks that are happy to be held accountable, and for those to enforce them as well. So I have full faith that they will be able to live up to it and serve us well and make us proud. I do second Councilor Flynn on the crime lab support. I know during the campaign going out, I've spoke to many people, rank and file, to the crime lab employees themselves, that were clamoring about the need to speed things up and to get. It will help us reduce crime in the long run by having the crime lab fully supported, and so I'd like to second Councilor Finn on his quest for that. And as for the details, I think Councilor Murphy really dove into those as well. So, just want to make sure that the folks in these unions know that we're there for them, as well as I know they'll be there for us. But accountability and enforcement is a key throughout, and I'm glad these contracts hold them to it, and thank you all for helping shepherd this through as well. No further questions on my end. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just a few questions, comments from me. I love the fact that Juneteenth now is a recognized holiday in this contract. One thing that I advocated for last time we were here discussing contracts is the higher ed benefits. If we have a hiring problem, one way I think we can incentivize people to take some of these jobs is to pass down some of those higher ed benefits to immediate family members. I think that's an incentive that I think will be helpful to our hiring challenges. And then it sounds like this might be a BPD question, but the timeline on the rollout for the second part of the paid detail system. Wanted to get that idea, and then also, do we know like the caseload of a detective? Like how many homicide cases or how many cases that they have, the solve rate, any information around?
I mean, BPD probably does. I do not know their caseload or their solve rate.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and I think we'll go to now public testimony. Yep. All right, now we'll go to public testimony. If you wish to to testify, please come to the mic on my left, your right. And when you come down, you have 2 minutes, and please state your name and any affiliation. George Lee.
Hello. Is the sound coming through? Is the sound coming through?
Yes.
My name is George Lee. I'm an organizer with Youth Justice and Power Union, and I'm here today to oppose this contract, and especially to ask the City Council to take time to actually look at more details of what's happening. One of the things that's very concerning about this contract is it says it authorizes BPD to create a centralized lockup facility. So, for example, folks struggling with addiction or housing, our neighbors who are at Moniacast and Mass Ave, instead of actually addressing the root causes of the problems that people need support with. It's criminalizing folks and causing danger to folks. We think, along with some other groups, that that type of process has actually already been happening in collaboration with Sheriff Tompkins. And supposedly it's supposed to save lives, but we're worried because actually 6 people have died under Sheriff Tompkins' custody in 2021 and 2022. Another person just died at the end of 2023 in December. And the idea of locking people up, doing this obscure centralized booking process, committing people to institutions for treatment instead of letting them voluntarily choose treatment, which the Mass Department of Public Health has actually shown causes more people to die from overdoses. That's a really big concern that this contract is doing that. And in fact, a number of counselors signed on to a hearing order to look more into this practice and what's happening with the centralized lockup. Counselors Fernandez Anderson, Braden, Fitzgerald, Flynn, Mejia, Murphy, Pepin, Santana, Weber, Worrell, and Louisiane all signed on to hearing orders to get more answers because the mayor and the BPD have not given answers. So it's not right to pass a contract that authorizes that when there hasn't even been discussion of what's actually happening and how to actually keep people safe. Number 2, this contract bloats the already large Boston Police budget. There's already $48 million that was passed in December in the first police contract. These 2 contracts would add another $25 million. So we're talking another $73 million to the Boston Police budget coming from these 3 contracts combined. And you can look at it, it's in the mayor's new budget that was filed today. You can see $50 million extra in BPD's budget this year. And there's probably extra costs in admin and so forth. So if you imagine $73 million, what could have gone to? Last year we were asking for $40 million for participatory budgeting. We're asking for another $6 million for youth jobs, $2.6 million for mental health crisis response, money for affordable housing. So that's another $73 million that's going to BPD if y'all keep passing these contracts instead of actually reining in costs. The mayor has broken her promise to cap overtime for police. She's doing these like court reform and medical reforms, but there's police officers making $100,000, $150,000 in overtime. Overtime needs to be capped, and the Boston City Council shouldn't approve another $73 million through all these contracts.
Thank you, George.
And just briefly, with the detail system, I know people said it already in December, but there's just layers and layers and layers and layers now of police who get all these details. And supposedly civilians can get some of them, but they're at the very bottom of the list, and that does not serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn it back over to my council colleagues. Any second round questions, closing remarks? Council Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, I also have heard over the last several months too from civilians in the brick unit. I believe they're with SEIU, and there was another union they're with is SCNA.
Cena, yep.
Cena. When are they up for their contract? Is that up now?
SEIU, I think you just approved recently, Citywide SEIU. I think it was approved by the mayor on the 25th of March. And Cena, I think, is still in active negotiation.
Okay. And that has a lot of is that civilians within the brick, or who else is in Cena?
Middle managers all through the city. It's a citywide unit.
Okay. Tell us, Jim, I'm still concerned about this contract here, what impact it's going to have on police families. That's what I want to get at, is what services, what are we providing police families in need? So are you saying we don't have language on that?
I'm willing to get back to you on that. I know there is some peer-to-peer programs and some other, I could give you some more details of, let me talk to BPD. There are some counseling programs I know for a fact with BPD, but I could give you a more thorough list if I got back to you in an email or something.
So this document that I'm reading, this like 4-page document that is signed, There's other information in here as part of the contract that we just don't have access to at this time.
So this is the amendments to the prior collective bargaining agreement, and there are some other services that may be available, you know, through the BPD would probably might not even be in there. It'd just be a different, you know, program.
Police officer suicide is a critical issue. Mental health counseling, critical issue. We've seen an increase throughout the country of police officers committing suicide. What services are we providing them? What services are we providing their family? How are we ensuring that police families get the care that they need and deserve?
I think that is something BPD takes very seriously, and I will respond with a more thorough list of what's offered to them.
Mental health counseling, certainly during the pandemic, it's impacted every walk of life, every occupation, including first responders, public servants. Is that part of this outreach? Is that part of this contract too? Is there something significant in this contract about police officers and their families, but police officers during the pandemic that went to work every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week? A lot of people were not in work, but they were working, protecting residents of Boston. How are we helping them now? The pandemic is over, but how are we helping them now with mental health counseling?
I mean, I'll give you a more thorough email, as I said, on that. They are, you know, this contract does provide for retro pay for all the time of the pandemic as well, so they will be getting retro checks for that time period.
I know, I understand that. I think the contract is good for pay, but I also like to look at the language itself on how it impacts police officers' families. What's in here, Jim, about supporting police officers that are veterans? That are veterans that might be in the reserves as well, that might be in the National Guard.
They agreed to the city's military leave policy, so that was part of both of these. I don't think they had officially signed off on it, but both unions did agree to the city's current military leave policy.
Was that the one that was signed within the last several months?
So I don't think that one has actually been given to them yet, so there's still actually a contract behind, but the new one, we will be providing them shortly.
On the military leave policy?
Yes.
Okay, who's writing that policy up?
I think it's already, my understanding is it's completed, and we just need final approval to send it out to the unions.
Okay, because I would be interested in talking to someone about that. I know that language as well as anyone in this city about leave policy impacting veterans and military families. I would be interested in talking to someone. I have talked to people in the past as it related to a couple of firefighter-related issues. That's all for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Any other of my colleagues?
Thank you. One follow-up.
Councilor Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councilor Flynn, for your questions. What date does this go back to?
It goes back to July 1, 2020.
And when does it expire? Has it already, or is it soon?
No, it goes to June 30th, 2025.
2 more years, okay. And when you mentioned retro, was it just referencing that, of course, we have to go back to June of 2020, or was it
Right.
an additional bump in their salary during the COVID time?
The provision, the salaries in this will go back to.
Well, they have to,
2020.
right, because this contract. But I'm asking, was there additional money given to the time the police officers served during COVID?
Other than what's listed here, no.
So it's just the obvious retro because this contract is out of, compliance, right? So it's, when it's signed, they will get the check of the money that's due to them.
Right, although they didn't have TCAP before, so that'll be a significant difference in their salaries.
Right. But that wasn't their fault, that's just because the contract hadn't been settled.
No, it's nobody's fault. That's just.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying,
I mean-
of course, there's things added to this, but we're already, 3.5 years into, almost 4 years into this contract, but it will be for another 1.5 years.
Right.
Okay. What would you consider the big issues that were the hardest to come to some agreement on?
I mean, I think the discipline and the removal of any just cause provisions from the contract was a really, was a difficult thing to get any agreement on. We, wanted some more on that. But, we're chipping away at it and got something. We wanted some accountability for police officers who commit crimes and do those kind of things. The detail system is super complicated. So that was another big issue.
Who will oversee that? Because I am hearing that it's not going smoothly, so who is in charge of helping work out those kinks? Because did it shift from sergeants, or who used to be in charge of giving out the details or being in charge of that?
It still ultimately ends up with the police commissioner and his command staff, and he, there's a superintendent in charge of that, and he has other people working with them on it. So it's, sworn officers are in charge of it.
All right. Were there any others? Issues?
We also talked a lot about the IME, the medical incapacitated unit, and there was almost 10% in the whole of the police unit was on medical leave, getting full pay, not working, sometimes for years and years, and we were backfilling it with overtime. So we talked a lot about, both internally and in the contract, how to make that work a little better, either to get people who are able to come back to work, or if they're not, to get them the disability retirement, refill that position. So we talked a lot about that. Not as much in the contract, but I think internally the department's trying to keep up on that better as well. And then I think union release was our other sort of, just not all of them, but some unions overusing time off for union release, to make that a little more fair and get some officers back on the street when we could.
Okay. Awesome. That's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Murphy. Council Fitzgerald?
Yeah, just wanted more for the folks, if anyone's listening in, the TCAP. Could you just explain what that is and why it was important on this?
They're not making that to you. You want me to explain it? It's kind of complicated.
It's basically to replace
Korea. All right, I'll
Yeah.
try. So.
You can give me
No,
the Cliffs
no.
notes, that's fine.
Yeah.
I know folks got an eclipse they want to go see and stuff. so.
Right.
So they had a different longevity plan called CREA, which stands for
Cumulative risk.
yes, right. And we got rid of that, and the TCAP is a system similar to what the firefighters have. And it is a longevity plan based on 1% of your salary, hazardous duty, and weekend differential, night differential. And that's added on to the amount set in the contract each year and is paid on a weekly basis.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
Yep.
sort
No,
of.
that's it.
It's a calculation, but translates to a lump sum in a weekly paycheck.
Yep, understood. Thank you very much again for your time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Fitzgerald. And again, thank you to the administration, the unions, all our police officers out there for all their hard work. And with that said, this hearing on dockets number 0530 to 0533, docket numbers 0631 to 0632 is adjourned.